your property value is lowered, like ours was after the last legislative session that determined we're gonna exempt 100,000 from people's appraisal values of their homes, then local governments can, and you increase their rate a little bit. And it's still, you can say, well, your property taxes were lowered, but this gives local governments a way to also assess higher taxes. So one thing, a former professor in our department, Malcolm Cross, I don't know if y'all know Dr. Cross or have heard about him. He retired 2 years ago. He's still on campus. He's very active in the community. He was our interim mayor for a while. He served with local party organization for a long time. So he knows his stuff. And he also sits on that appraisal board for the county. And he says, people come up to the appraisal people and say, why are you appraising my property so high? It's increasing my tax rate. When actually it's not that so much. It's these local government entities and the tax rates that they're charging. So you got to think about that too, and think about, you know what, we're electing these people. Again, you know, what they're doing is okay. You know, we need to kind of watch that and make sure they're doing what we want them to do, because we're elected them. Okay, so property taxes is the main source of revenue for local government. However, local governments can also impose a sales tax of up to 2 cents on every dollar. So 2% above the state, or a total tax rate of 8.25%. That is the highest you can go in the state. That's state law. You can't exceed that. So here in Erath County, our local governments have chosen to use that opportunity to increase the sales tax. So we pay 8.25% on our sales taxes here if you buy something here. In the city of Stephenville, I should say. So Erath County decided they're going to add 50 cents, or like 0.5%. So the other cent and a half, 1.5%, is assessed by the city of Stephenville. So the city of Stephenville is collecting sales taxes, as is Erath County. And so they're getting that source of income above and beyond the property taxes that they're assessing us. Now, in the city of Stephenville, they get how much sales tax? What percentage?
6.5 or 6.25?
6.25 is the state.
8.25.
Yeah, so Stephenville itself, so our county gets 0.5, and we can go up to 2 total. So Stephenville gets the rest of it, 1.5%, okay? Yep.
So what if, say you buy something online, how does that work for the sales tax?
Yeah, that's state imposed sales tax. You know, that's my understanding, because I know there was a problem for years. We didn't have ways to collect sales taxes on that. That's, yeah, but you know what, that's something I need to check out. I'm not sure about the local government. You would think that they'd want their share too. And so is that your address where you have it shipped? Is that South-based? Or is it, did you know,
Yeah,
Declan?
yeah.
Okay, so they do add local sales taxes too? Oh, okay.
I
Well,
can pull up the email, because there was one time I ordered something, I like broke it down.
oh, really? Okay.
I don't know if I have the email.
Okay, thank you. That'd be great, just to know, because I wasn't sure. Because I remember that was a big deal, and when the state was like, hey, we want our share of people spending online. And it became such a thing. While he's looking that up, the 1.5% that the city gets, and 1.25 of that, almost all of it, goes to the Stephenville Economic Development Authority. So those of y'all who are looking at rural economic growth, this is a nice way to collect money, and they focus on things like bringing more businesses here, like Atwood's there on 281. They try to entice new development here in our community, and so they're using our tax dollars in order to promote our economic development. So I think it's interesting, the city gets 0.25% of that tax collection. It's interesting too, because when you pay your taxes here, it goes to the comptroller, the state comptroller's office, so it's state, and then the state comptroller's office sends it back to the local entities that get that money. So this is leverage that the state comptroller has and the state government itself has. So if local governments aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, state comptroller's office the legislature can tell them, don't release those funds. Leverage. Yeah. So I think it's interesting how that works. Okay, well, are you keeping on looking that up? Declan, you still looking?
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate you doing that, thank you. 'Cause that's a really good question. So, this is the image of the biennial revenue estimate. Somebody on this side of the room, who comes up with this biennial revenue estimate? Who makes this? Yes, thank you. Comptroller at the beginning of a legislative session, very good. So this is the estimate for our prior legislative session on what he anticipated being our revenue for the next 2 years. And of course, this year started September 1st, 2023, and for 2025 started in September 2024. So we're still in this cycle, and that's what our comptroller estimated we would take in at the state level. This does not include those federal funds coming in. So you can see at the state level, our anticipated budget for revenue grew quite a bit, right, from 149 billion to 188 billion, quite a significant difference. And as time has gone on, we have a surplus. So this was a conservative estimate of our revenue coming in. So we do have a surplus as well with our budget, which is a nice thing to have when you have a balanced budget requirement. You can see here in this pie chart that sales taxes are 53% of the money that's coming in at the state level. So that's a significant chunk. We have other revenues, fees, investments, et cetera, 10.7. All other state taxes, 8.9. But I wanted to call your attention to motor vehicle sales and rentals, 7.7. And oil production tax is 8.0. Your textbook is a little bit dated. I don't know if you've noticed that, but the information they had in this chapter about the revenue sources, the top two did not include that, or top three did not include oil production tax. And I think that's indicative of how reliant we are on the price of a barrel of oil in our economy. It can really change, its contribution to our revenue.
I think it's based on your shipping interest, because every time I bought something from a different state, it's at 8.25%.
Okay. 8.25. All right. So there you go. Thank you. Now I know something I didn't know. Thank you for asking that question. Yeah. Okay. Just, I guess, the cover basis. Yep. Which I think local governments would want their share too. So that makes sense. So that was state revenue. This is local government revenue. As mentioned, property taxes. You can see an overview of property taxes across the years. Again, a little bit dated. The information on the comptroller's website is not presented this neatly anymore. You've got these interactive graphs and things that make it more difficult to put it on a PowerPoint slide, so I'm just showing you some things that are just a little bit old, but not too bad. Of course, you can see how property taxes have increased year by year. The green, which is the biggest chunk, the local government takes the most of our property taxes.
School district?
School district it is, yes. Those are school districts. And then we have the counties in the light blue, the cities, and special districts is in the orange there. So you can see how that looks. Also here on the right column, you see the tax rates for these different government entities, and these are the limits. So the legislature imposes a ceiling on the tax rates. So these different entities can go underneath it, and they can play around with that, just depending on the revenue they're getting from the appraisals. How we can adjust the tax rate accordingly. And sometimes, they claim, we cut the tax rate, which is, our city has done, which is a claim that people like to hear. The tax rate went down, but at the same time, if our appraisal values are going up, it doesn't lead to a cut in property taxes necessarily. And that's been my experience since I moved to Stephenville. Every year it's going up, the property taxes. So that's just, that's how that works. I wanted to show you an example from Granbury. The Granbury website does a good job of just showing you different tax rates from different entities. If you lived in Granbury, you'd be paying a city tax, and the tax rate is limited to 38 cents per $100 value on your property. Hood County, there's the county tax is 24 cents for every $100 of value on your property. The library, this is a special district, so they assess property taxes for the library, public library. So people are paying for it out of their property taxes, and that is way down here, less than 1 cent, 0.6. Lateral Road, there's another special district, and then Granbury ISD, you can see the tax rate is much higher than the others. So it's nicely laid out there, so you can see how that adds up. All right. There is an argument to be made that our taxes are mainly regressive. So there was a short section in this chapter about regressive versus progressive taxes. Recall. What is regressive tax? What does that do?
Okay, regressive tax, where the tax rate increases as income decreases.
Yes.
And progressive was the tax rate increases as income increases.
Okay, very good, exactly. So if you think about our federal income tax, you get these tax brackets, right? And the higher your tax bracket, the greater percentage you're gonna have to pay for your federal income tax. So we don't have a state income tax, right? Yay! We're one in only 7 states in the United States that doesn't have a state income tax, right? So we don't have that kind of tax. So we have other kinds of taxes, though, including sales and excise taxes that we've talked about. We have property taxes, no income taxes. So this is some graphic image that is produced by an interest group, so you know it's a little, it's kind of having a perspective that it's promoting. But I think it's a good way to look at what happens when you do have a regressive tax. So if we're paying everybody in the city of Stephenville is paying 8.25 cents for every dollar they spend. People who make $5 million are paying the same thing as people who make $5,000. But if you think about it, people making $5,000, that 8.25% is a bigger chunk of their income. So that's a regressive tax, and that's why there's an argument that, you know, we have a regressive tax structure. And so you can see here, you know, it's quintiles of income, the lowest fifth, second, middle, fourth, and then the top fifth of income earners, and the percentage of their income that is used to pay for general sales taxes. So at the lowest 20%, 4.2, going all the way down to the top 1% of income levels, it's 0.7 that they're using to pay. So it's a regressive tax structure. Property taxes, same thing. Home, rent, car. Even if you're living in an apartment and you have a lease instead of a mortgage, you're still paying property taxes that are folded into your rent payments. So that could be arguably a regressive tax. You can see those 20% paying 3.6% of their income, the top 1%, 0.7. Now there's some arguments that can be made, right? I think your book does a good job of saying, well, you know, some people say Texas really has a regressive structure, but there's some arguments against that as well. Do you remember anything that was mentioned in the reading?
Well, you could say that for more progressive is like in regards to property taxes, that let's say the top 1% of people income wise, they're probably gonna have more property. So they might have like 100-acre ranches and stuff like that, whereas the person, so they're going to pay more of a property tax on because of that than the person who just lives in like a 2-bedroom rental apartment.
Really good point. Agreed. Now, of course, we do have property tax exemptions for people who are using their land for ag purposes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for their palaces that they live in sometimes, they're going to be paying property taxes that are way up there. Yeah, good point. Makes sense. And in the book, it says, well, you know, if you are lower income, you've got all these tax breaks that people are offering you. You have other services that are supported by public funds. So it's not that regressive necessarily. But it's something to think about. You think, do we need or want an income tax here in Texas? Would that be helpful?
Mm-mm.
No. No. when I went to grad school in Illinois, they have a state income tax. That was not nice to pay that too. So property taxes and sales taxes, and they just say, okay, there's your state income tax as well. And it's 5%. And even something like that is proportional, just 5% of your income is what your tax is.
That is a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah. And if you think again, it's in a way it's regressive, I think. Because 5% of your income when you're making like $16,000 like a grad student is, it's a lot more of your income being taken up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing, you know, people mention some, that income tax for Texas, but we took care of that a couple of years ago. We moved it into the Constitution, where we have to pass an amendment in order to have an income tax here in our state. It makes the bar a little bit higher. to
That's
go
good.
there. Yeah.
What do you mean, you just say like, if it's a 5% state income tax, it was a lot more if you were making less money, like, what do you mean by that, so?
Well, I think, you know, just coming from the graduate student perspective, with $16,000 income, and even 5% of that, you know, that was a significant amount to me. And if I was making $1 million, if 5% of that, it's like, you know, you could let go of more easily, I would think, if that makes sense. Now so proportional taxation, economists will argue it's more evenly distributed. But for me, having that experience, I just thought, yeah, it seemed a little regressive to me.
Okay.
Still, it's a lot of money. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Even when you're higher income. Oh, just something to think about. All right, so that was our revenues. Now expenditures, I put these up here because I think they're just really interesting. And again, these are the pie charts that you don't see anymore on the comptroller's website. This one was from the 2019 legislative session. All right, I'm going to back it up a little bit. We had a great recession around 2010. Maybe you heard about it?
Mm-hmm.
We had a serious deficit in our budget, like over $10 billion deficit. They had thought we were going to have, because, you know, we have a really strong economy here, but because of the recession, it finally hit us around 2010, and we had less money to spend. So how are we going to balance our budget? Got to take the money off somewhere. $5 billion was taken away from education. So assistants who were in the classroom were not rehired, teachers who retired were not replaced. So that meant that classrooms were larger, our students had to live in the same classrooms. The spending per student went down in order to balance the budget. So education took a huge hit in 2011 during that legislative session. And the legislators didn't really pay attention to it for a while. We were coming out of the recession, right? And we're just meeting every other year. But finally in 2019, there was a lot of pressure on the legislature. Hello, you know, we've been waiting for you to address education spending for a while now. Isn't it about time you turn some attention? Because previous years, after from 2011 up to 2019, when this budget was put together, Health and Human Services took up the biggest share of our expenditures. Medicaid expenses were growing, and so it just was more than education, because they still had not made up for that shortfall of $5 billion from 2011. So in 2019, finally there's enough public pressure. Remember, the public agenda was saying, catch up to spending on the students, make it at least on par with what it was in 2011. And the legislature listened. So they did. So you can see here in this pie chart, the largest share of spending was for what?
Education.
Yes, education. Exactly. So it worked. They got back up there. But it was a budgetary trick where they just moved some money in the budget from Health and Human Services over to education in the budget. And so that made education surpass the healthcare part. So you got, you know, they have these ways of making it look like they're addressing it, and they did address it. They did go back up to par of 2011 spending. Yeah. But yeah, it's still, I think it's just interesting to see these images. Now, this was in 2021. It's during COVID. And in this graph, what is the largest amount of spending going on?
Education.
Education, K through 12. Did Texas change its mind and suddenly decided we're gonna big boost to funding on education? No, I think it was COVID. Think about the federal government during COVID. We had the CARES Act and 3 different spending bills from the federal government. One was a huge influx, it's like $18 billion for education. So because we had federal funds that went to the state, and the state got to decide how are we going to distribute this money, then that enabled the legislature to have more funding to send to those schools. So that's why there's a huge, huge share of the budget going to education, because we had those federal funds helping us out. And then also for the healthcare as well, because you can imagine how much the PPE, the COVID vaccinations, all that stuff, the federal government was sending us money for that, so the state was spending less money for their share of healthcare.
That makes
So,
sense.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, higher education here in the gray was benefited too. Here, higher education was 6.7% of the budget. In 2021, it was 14% of the budget. So they had more money to spend on higher ed as well. Let's continue. Let's see if I can find it. So the 2021 budget included $8.6 billion for higher education. It included $500 million to fund enrollment growth, to give universities to help, you know, kind of market and recruit more students. And then also about the same amount, no, a little bit less than that, for need-based financial aid. So they also realized tuition was a challenge for many students, so they wanted to include some spending on that. So that was good. Okay, so that was just a brief overview of the expenditures. There's some challenges that are going on, of course. So during the Great Recession, over $10 billion in deficit. We didn't collect the money we thought we were going to. What are we going to do? We have to balance the budget. So if you have your own budget at home with your own finances, if for some reason you can't work and your income is lowered, what do you have to do?
Cut your spending.
Spending. Or raise
Money.
money, yes, in the form of taxes.
Taxes.
Exactly. So if you have a Great Recession going on like we had in 2011, where Texas was relatively unscathed when compared with the rest of the country, but still there were a lot of home foreclosures, and you know, we were struggling in various ways. So what could you do if you were a legislator in 2011? Are you going to cut spending or raise taxes?
Cut spending.
That's what they had to do. Hence, that $5 billion from education. Another way you could handle this, move some money around to try to address the most critical areas. But when you have a budget already passed, the governor and the LBB must agree to moving that money. Remember the LBB?
Legislative Budget Board.
Okay, good. Okay. We have a savings account. The Economic Stabilization Fund is its official name. And it is a fund that the comptroller oversees, and it's supposed to have in it like 7 to 12% of the appropriations that we make has to go into a savings account. And so it's there. Billions of dollars there now, and so sometimes the comptroller has to spend some of it in order to keep within the constitutional parameters, but 7 to 12% of the appropriations. So we could pull money out of the rainy day fund if we need it. They could have had that $5 billion stay in education, but pull down on the rainy day fund. Well, our conservatism kind of resists doing that, right? We want to keep our money in our savings account. We don't want to use it unless we absolutely have to. So that was a choice that the legislators made when they met this unbalanced budget. They can borrow. Our state can borrow. But note, we have constitutional limits. It can only be a fraction of the budget that you can borrow. So it's a small fraction. They don't want to go into debt.
When they borrow, is it like from banks or other states or other countries? federal
It
government.
depends, they use bonds,
Uh-huh.
yeah, to do that, so I guess it depends on who is investing in those bonds,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of times, these public bonds are pretty safe instruments. And in Texas, the bonds are backed by the state
Mm-hmm.
and our ability to collect money. So we're a pretty safe bet for our bonds here in Texas because we do have a strong economy. So it just depends. That's a good question. My father-in-law used to like municipal bond funds a lot because they were safe. Okay, local government budgets. Of course, they're affected by property tax limits. So the legislature does put a limit on these tax rates that they can charge. In fact, in our last legislative session, that limit for school property taxes went down. It went down because property appraisals were going up so much.
Is there no limit for property appraisals?
Well, there is. So, but it's a percentage. So it can only go up a certain percentage from what it was previously, and that lasts just a certain number of years.
So it could
Okay.
just keep going up.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of messed up.
Exactly. Which it kind of does.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, in a way, that's a good thing, right? You want your property to increase in value.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good for the seller, not the buyer.
Yeah. Exactly. All right, and then another thing that governments have to think about as far as spending that is not mentioned very often is public employees paid by the government usually have a pension plan that they're paid into. They pay in some money, and the government entity pays in some money for the pension plan. And all this pot of money that the employees and the government is contributing to grows, and we don't want it just sitting there, right, not earning any kind of interest, so it's invested. And the wisdom of investing sometimes can be problematic. You got to make sure you're making a return on this money and you're putting it into good solid vehicles to get some good interest rates and dividends. I'm going to show you some local government plans here.
Who invests the money for them?
Well, okay, so they take out a percentage of my paycheck,
Uh-huh.
and it's sometimes matched by the employee. I'm not sure here exactly
Mhm.
what it is, but Tarleton also pays part of it. It's both going into the pension
Okay.
for me. And just for public employees, generally that's how it's done. So it's partially the employee, partially employer for these public entities. So, let's see, I was gonna look at Brownwood Fireman's Relief and Retirement Fund. Brownwood is nearby. The funded ratio is about half of it. Half of what they need to have to cover the pensions for these former firefighters is in the account. Only half.
That's not good.
Yeah, no.
What happens if they can't pay?
Okay, what happens if they can't pay?
Suck to suck?
Sorry?
So does it just suck to suck or what?
But you know what? These people worked. They contributed to the fund.
Right.
It's not their fault it's not in it.
Yeah.
It's the government's fault.
Right, so does the
Then what
government
happens?
pay? They do.
They are on the hook.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this works kind of like a 401k that the government can put into other stuff, essentially?
Yes. Yes, kind of, sort of.
Just
But-
the fact that they're matching, kind of?
Yeah. But you have less autonomy? I don't know how to say it, because I don't have any say over my teacher retirement.
Right.
Yeah, but with 401k, I think you do have more autonomy, don't you? You can guide how you want to invest in. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a good question. But a funded ratio of about 80% is pretty safe. That's what you want, and that's what you look for.
Mhm.
So for Brownwood, it's 50. And they anticipate, so they based their, how they believe they would make enough money on the assumption of a 7% interest return for their investment. This is not working out so well for them right now. Whereas if you look at the Amarillo Fireman's Relief and Retirement Fund, funded ratio is 111%, so they've done something right. But the point is, if there's not the money in the pension fund to pay the people who have earned it, the local governments have got to figure out a way to put that in their budget in order to address the deficit. So that's another pull on local government revenue.
Wait, so am I understanding this correct? So they put the money in the pension, and then those 100%, 50%, whatever is the money they've invested in and gotten in return to put in the
Basically, so, people are getting monthly
Right.
pension checks, right?
right.
Right, and so it needs, the money in the investment needs to be able to meet that.
Okay. So why doesn't like local governments and stuff, so they don't have to pay that money, pay like professional investors to just invest the money for them instead of just leaving it to chance by the other people?
Right, they can, and they moved towards that more now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that's something they did or not.
Yes, they do. Yeah, one thing, I don't know, that just stands out to me is in Kentucky, their state teacher retirement fund was overseen by this body of people that were also politicians.
Mm-hmm.
And they invested it in very poor vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't have enough, it was going down. And one thing they also did was people were clamoring for more transportation, build more highways.
Mm-hmm.
They took the teacher retirement money,
Ooh.
yes, used it to build the highways.
That's
That'd be
shady.
mad.
Isn't it?
Wait, did you even
Yes.
like notify them, or was this just like, I'm gonna do this just for
Oh
fun?
my
Yeah,
gosh,
some kind
revolt.
of underhanded deal. So, but it got out, right, because I read it in the news.
Right.
And so these teachers had lost their retirement, and now what they do is they do give them the retirement, but now teachers have moved over to a 401k.
Yeah.
That's good.
Instead of, having this board in charge.
That's crazy.
I know, right?
That should be illegal.
Yeah.
I know.
That seems very illegal.
Yeah,
I
it
feel like that
does.
was very illegal.
Yeah, so, I don't think Texas is anything like that that I know of. But I'd like to check the teacher retirement system in Texas, for many of the public school teachers, their retirement. It is funded 72.68%, not bad.
Mm-mm.
I'm not usually up there, so I don't worry too much about it. Judicial retirement system for our judges, 102%.
Imagine
that. And so the state plans are doing pretty well. It's just
Imagine
those
that.
local governments, Local governments are dependent on property taxes in small towns like Brownwood.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to develop economically, right, to get their tax base up so they can help raise money to meet this demand. All right, so that's a challenge, funding pensions. Also, as we expand in our population, people move into the state, they demand more government revenue. So we need outgrowing our revenue. So the money that's coming into the state accounts or local government accounts is being shadowed by the population growth. So if you have a small town, like many of those towns, Frisco used to be a tiny town, up in the DFW area. We have some small towns, Hazlet, Roanoke. And these are small towns that are now just booming, right? And they have neighborhoods popping out of the prairies all over the place in our state, and particularly in that Texas Triangle we talked about. So you see that happening a lot. Where are these people coming from? Where are they going to live when they come to our state? We've got to build more houses, yeah.
I'm actually from Roanoke,
Oh, yeah.
and it's crazy because Roanoke Trophy Club, like 10 years ago, it's like grown like exponentially, like 200%.
Right. So Trophy Club used to be out there.
Yeah.
Its own little distinct community, and you go through the country to get there.
Like my dad moved in. He was one of the first people to move into like the growing neighborhoods.
Uh-huh.
So he could see like Texas Motor Speedway from his house, and then like all these neighborhoods just pop up and new schools. I mean,
It's
especially
crazy.
Byron Nelson, 2009, and then that just.
Yep.
And then a lot of businesses would come in, and especially in Trophy Club. Yeah, it's just crazy.
It is crazy. And so you think about all these people moving in. Well, you're going to have to build roads to drive on, right? And you've got to get the infrastructure, the electric lines, the water lines, and the internet lines, and all that stuff that comes with having a neighborhood.
You know, like 114 is getting expanded. That goes right through Roanoke to connect Southlake and Justin.
Really?
Yeah. So, and they're going to expand 377 too. So
It's gonna take like 10
crazy.
years of
It
construction.
is.
Yeah.
What did you say? It's an issue that the expansion of that infrastructure is beginning to take agricultural land? So what can be done about that while also increasing the infrastructure and helping the economy? And then,
Well, I would say something that'd be very popular, that's
I
going
know.
up. You know, have more
This
communities
is the most
where you have
interesting
high
topic
rise
I know.
development and dense populations in certain areas, that people, they like to
right.
you know? And so it's hard here, and we have such a culture of getting in the car and going somewhere too,
Mm.
you know? And so trying to have an urban development, I think is, I mean, when you're young, yeah, sure, let's do that. But once you have kids, like, do you really wanna live in a congested area? I think West 7th Street in Fort Worth, y'all know that area?
Yes.
Montgomery Wards, that plaza and all that.
Mhm.
Crazy, right? And I think that's kind of what they tried to do there. Increase the density, you know, have a
Mhm.
smaller land use. But yeah, I know what you're saying. There used to be cotton fields around DFW when I was y'all's age.
That's crazy.
I know. Cotton fields.
It's hard to believe.
Yeah. So this is happening so much, and it's a concern. Can our government handle all this growth? Because who's footing the bill for those roads and the infrastructure? Us. The schools that you're going to have, they're going to have children there. Who's going to educate those children? Who's going to have clinics there? You know, there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to occur. So, does the government have the money to do it?
Could they like pass like bills to bring in more business, like big businesses to help with offset that? Like,
Yes.
okay, like, so I'm from Castro, which is a small, it's not a small town anymore, speaking of that, but it's near San Antonio, and they just built like a huge Microsoft plant, like, basically off the highway. It's huge.
Yeah, that's going on, for sure. So you're bringing in that company, but you're going to be offering them tax abatements, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to not get the property tax money, but you're going to get the company hiring a lot of people who will be buying houses, who will be paying property taxes.
It's like playing chess.
Yes, it is. So who's going to get the most money?
Yeah.
So I actually, I had an accounting class in high school, and we got to talk to the CFO of the local school district, Northwest ISD, which was like basically the surrounding it. It's humongous and it's growing very fast.
Yes.
And they were talking about how the property taxes that people think are going like to the school districts is actually they're not receiving all that money, which is how they're able to grow so fast in those surrounding cities. Because they're raising property taxes, and people think that it's all going to the schools, but it's not. It's going to the cities.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. See, and people don't know that, you know, and so you can understand the confusion and the complaining, right? They don't know that a lot of it's going to, you need to know, look at your property tax bill, because it'll tell you all the stuff that it's going towards.
Yeah, because they were raising property taxes, but they weren't giving any more actually to the schools. It was just going to
Good point.
turning the fields into Walmarts and stuff,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
Good.
I just didn't catch the blank on this slide.
I'm sorry?
What's the blank on this slide?
Oh, on that one, it's revenue, money coming in. So it's a problem. So when we have so many people moving in, there's an increased demand for public services that government you would expect to be able to provide. But how are they going to provide it? And if you think about like Frisco, you're a small little town, and then all of a sudden there's this huge demand for streets. Where is Frisco going to get the money for the streets? If you're a small town, you might have to go into debt a little bit, issue a bond, right, be able to get that money. But there's some other creative ways to pay for all this infrastructure, which we looked at a lot more in the 2000s, and it's since become less popular. But economic development, we were talking about economic development. Just bring companies in here, going to bring in more homes built, people are paying their taxes. It's great. We're going to offer property tax exemptions or abatements to these companies. So we have this business-friendly environment. And some examples like y'all were talking about So Toyota's North American headquarters in Plano received a tax abatement from Plano. I think I mentioned that on Monday. So they said, we're gonna hold your taxes steady. You don't have to pay any more in taxes, even though you're increasing the property values by being here. So they gave them that. Subsidies and grants are monies. Like y'all know what a grant is, hopefully. You get some money. A grant is they just give it to them. So Plano agreed to give Toyota a $6.75 million grant, the community of Toyota. So they raised that in Plano somehow, maybe a little bit of taxing some entities. So that's that. Then also, we have right to work laws here in our state, which makes it more attractive for companies to move in. And I talked about those earlier. Do you remember? This is where you don't have to join a union. Okay? So we're an open shop state is another way to put that. If you go to Illinois, where I was a grad school, it was a closed shop state, so I had to join the graduate students union. They didn't give me a choice. They took money out of my paycheck to pay for my union dues. But if you think about that, everybody who's working in that sector, like the United Auto Workers, if we had a closed shop state, and we have those GM plants in Arlington, you know, the people, if there was, everybody had to be part of the union would be a lot stronger, because everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a right to work state, well, whoever wants to join joins, and then other people get to benefit from any kind of benefits that they accrue. People who are management in corporations prefer right to work laws because the unions are weaker. So they don't have to deal with them as much. So that makes it business friendly. All right, so we've got this going on, economic development, and part of that, when we're trying to keep up with all the people moving here, and we need to widen the roads in that Texas Triangle, we entered into a lot of PPPs, public-private partnerships. PPPs, is that blank? Public-private partnerships, where a private organization, a private corporation, private hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, private entities that have money or have access to money by getting loans will agree to build infrastructure. So but prior to this 2000s, we had few toll roads in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But nowadays, if you know the area, you know there are quite a few toll roads, and getting into those lanes that you have and all that stuff. Right, Chisholm Trail Parkway. They also, Houston had a bunch of toll roads being built, so did San Antonio.
So do the toll roads, like private investors get all the money, or are they taxed on that as well?
Are taxed for that?
Like, because you have to pay to use a toll road.
Correct.
So is all the money you're paying going to the investors that built it?
Pretty much. So they might have an agreement for 70 years, we're going to get the tolls, and then after the tolls, then it can go to the public fund, go to the government.
Oh, so it's basically paving their way for their whole lives, and then the
Yeah.
public gets it.
Yeah.
Sounds like a
I
great
don't
deal.
But
Well, not for us, but for them.
right, it is. It's, well, why do you think people do it? It's a sovereign wealth fund, oftentimes, that will do that. It gets some money.
Because almost in Dallas, you kind of have to buy the toll tag. Because there's
Especially on
so
35.
many.
It's like they make it so you have to use it.
Well, yep. Yes, but the thing is, there's so many toll roads now, and there's so much of these, or so many of these that are not based on public funding, but private funding, and they're getting the tolls, that
Right.
people started pushing back against that. So we slowed way down in the 2010s with these toll roads. But that's one way to get it done, right? We're not being asked to raise our taxes. We're not moving money from one place to another in order to build these roads. Private industry, private companies are taking care of it for us. But then they have a reason for doing it. So they get some profit from doing that. Gated communities are another way. HOAs. This is a new form of special district, in a way. It's kind of a hidden government because they're not really listed on your property tax bill, but they are taking funds through those HOA dues. And what happens is a land developer will come in, and it's a general rule, not always. They'll say, okay, we want to develop these 300 acres, and we're gonna put in the roads and the infrastructure for you, city. We're gonna take out a loan, and we're gonna put those in, build our houses, we're gonna sell our houses, and then we're gonna have people living in those houses pay back what we just issued in bonds. It's part of the HOA funds that you have to pay.
So the developer is getting the HOA money?
Yes,
I didn't know that. That's
until
interesting.
every single house is paid off in that neighborhood, or every single house is bought, sorry, in that
Uh-huh.
neighborhood,
Okay.
because they still own part of it.
So, okay, this might be silly, but like, you know how usually neighborhoods, they have like a model home?
Uh-huh.
Does that count, like, can that be a workaround so they always get the HOA money?
I guess so. I don't know if it's a
You know what I mean?
holdout.
Because if they never like sell the house, and technically it's a house in the neighborhood.
Right, but you know, if they do sell it, then they've got that money.
Yeah, then they've got, yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah. They get their money back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a way to invest. But again, they use these a lot around the 2000s as a big deal. It was a way to get neighborhoods built without the government having to pay a lot of money for it. The private developers were paying for it. But now there's more pushback with that too.
Wasn't that part of the road to the 2008 housing bubble? There was all these like houses being built, people weren't actually like being able to afford them.
Correct. Yes. So that was all a piece of that, right? Okay, let's build the homes. We want people to have a home. Let's let people live in a home. And then it was actually the financial instruments and the financial institutions who were giving those people good homes. And so and then they were selling off this mortgage metals to make money for the financial institution. It just got passed down the chain and just didn't work out. It was bad. We had some financial institutions close. So, all right, one way we can address this booming population and get funding is to broaden our economic base. We are such an energy reliant economy, so this energy sector remains significant, yet it's about 20% of Texas GDP is based on oil and natural gas. So what happens when oil and natural gas prices go down? You don't have those oil field workers being hired anymore. My son graduated with a petroleum engineering degree from Texas A&M, could not get a job for a while because price of oil had gone down. They just weren't hiring. So part of our economy is tied to the price of oil. And 8% of the wages paid in Texas is based on oil and gas, and 5% of the workforce. I mean, it's kind of huge. So one of the goals was, let's diversify. Let's get the North American Toyota headquarters to come into Plano. That's great. Let's get
Tesla?
some Amazon.
We have Tesla in
Tesla?
Austin.
Oh my gosh. So, yes.
I drive past it all the time. Or used
Elon
to.
Musk has been trying to get a Tesla dealership in Texas for years. Yeah.
What was the type of the percent next to it?
This one?
Yes.
That's 20%. And the other dealerships in the state were keeping them out.
Really?
They were lobbying the
I didn't know
legislature,
that.
do not let him come in.
Oh, well, they let him come in.
Yeah, because he's competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's probably another competition.
Yeah.
I know for electric cars, though, it's like, no, it's
No.
going to cut into our business. Yes.
What's the first one?
The first one was energy sector. All right, so Apple, this is in Austin. They got $8.6 million in tax breaks because they promised to bring 3,600 jobs to the area. Amazon fulfillment in Houston, Harris County offered them a 10-year tax abatement, which represents about $2 million in lost revenue that Houston could have had if they'd collected those taxes. So, this is yin yang, like you're talking about. Economic development helps, but then we're losing out on the tax revenue. So, more challenges, fiscal policies tied up in our Constitution. Less than 20% of the money can be used for discretionary spending, but we can move money from one area to another. You gotta have the governor and LBB agree, but what if multiple crises happen at the same time? What are you gonna do with money? reforming our tax system is very difficult, right? Few of us support state income tax, another stream of revenue for government. Consolidate taxes, we have over 60 different types of taxes in our state. Maybe consolidate some? But then, if you do that, you could always find something else to tax. Fewer tax breaks for businesses, that might be good. However, if we want to be a business-friendly state, if we want to have a strong economy, we're in competition with every other state. Uh-huh.
So when they allow like Tesla to move in and have tax breaks and subsidies, do we get the money eventually? Is that like a 20-year period where they can like get their feet going, and then we get the money, or do we always have less money coming from them?
Oh, that's a really good, that's usually for a year, like
Okay.
a certain number of years, yeah. But you know, that's betting on the future. And what are people gonna be doing in the future? Well, Tesla's even gonna be around in the future, you know, it's, there's, yeah, it's chance.
Aren't
When
they
it says
catching on
fiscal
fire?
policies better than
Aren't they?
Constitution 20%
Yeah,
discretionary
like the lithium
spending, what does
batteries
that
will
mean?
explode.
Well, it means, that there are certain things
The
like
trucks are not. They are. My God.
the
The cars are
transportation,
not.
you know, I should probably say
Someone
constitution and
said American
statutes
flag
and
rocked.
laws, but it just means that there are those dedicated funds. So 83% of the money that comes into the state
Honestly, the
is
cars are
already
expensive.
dedicated to
Expensive
spending on something in
A
particular.
brand new Ford
Okay,
truck.
so
You know?
20%
No,
says
it's
that.
true.
Correct. So if something happens in our state, like the Great Recession, there wasn't a lot of money to move around, and especially with the deficit that we had. If people want to spend more money, so like the voucher program that Governor Abbott is proposing, that will spend more money. So, good, we'll be taking out discretionary funds. All right, fiscal policy. A lot to it, very cursory coverage here. And that's about it for this lecture. Now for our discussion, I want to review with you guys the 3 types of policies that we talked about on Monday. Okay. And Olivia made the mistake of looking at me. So, what's the top of policy that we talked about on Monday?
Oh, goodness. A type of policy?
So remember we did the policy making model, and then the next slide was the 3 different types of
Oh,
policies.
gosh. Oh, thank you. Distributive.
Okay, distributive policies. Somebody on this side of the room, what is distributive policy? All right, thanks. Olivia, what's another one?
Redistributive.
Okay, redistributive. What's the redistributive policy? Yeah.
It's where taxpayers contribute funds to specific groups.
Okay.
For example, Medicaid, profit.
Okay. But do the taxpayers say, I'm feeling kind of generous today, I think I'm gonna give, no, right, no. Who's making that decision? And in particular, what branch of government do y'all think makes this kind of decisions most often? Yes, legislature, influenced by the executive, especially because we have unified government with all 3. Governor, the House, and the Senate all being the same party. They all want to work together, make the party look good, look strong most of the time. Okay, good. And then the 3rd type.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Okay. Regulatory policy.
Regulatory, good. And what's that over here? Good.
Restricts action of certain entities
Okay.
as to specific zones, like pollution zones.
Okay, say that one more time. Restricts actions of certain
Entities.
entities.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Y'all got it? Okay. You're gonna pick out a little policy example, and then I'm gonna ask you, is it distributive, redistributive, or regulatory? Yes.
So if we're already hitting our like 8.25% tax,
Yes.
and you know, like the cities where we have to build a lot of things.
Yes.
So for example, the new football field is putting in front of the middle school.
Yes.
That raises our taxes, how does that work?
Yes,
We're
it
already
does.
putting the 8.25%.
Mm.
That's a good
Right,
question.
good question. So school districts don't collect, yes.
Distributive is when you're still.
That's, but so that means property tax, right? And what they
That's why it's
do
called
is
property.
when they have a big project like that, a capital project, they will issue a bond. So it's like a loan that they take out. So we can do that.
But I think the point was the amount of money left over that you have after all of your critical expenses like that is much lower, but like.
Just like that.
Professional, I know. I don't want to dress like that. This is something you won't let me. Have you seen those TikToks?
Yes.
It's just that it hits you harder, but it's like.
Because people will say, well, can we?
She looks like she does not belong
I
here.
know. I want to be here. Yeah. Oh, that's so true.
Bro, what is mine?
Would you say like
I don't even know.
or something? I was like, yeah.
I see that.
Yeah.
So we voted to build that football stadium. It barely passed.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think.
Thank you.
I feel well out.
Those old people, I tell you, they voted.
Oh my gosh. Listening to them on Era County Rant Rave is the best. They complain about so much stuff.
I like that one that exposed the people who got DUIs.
Oh my god, Era County busted.
Yes.
I love it.
That's what you get.
Okay, everybody kind of know
Build a
where your policy
No.
I think I thought that would be
Community?
Oh, that's it.
And let me say this, distributive and redistributive, sometimes there's a line that you can cross. So if you can justify why you say it's distributive or redistributive, then you're okay. All right? Okay. So, y'all tell me this is too elementary. I was thinking of redistributive people, get back there, distributive, and then regulatory. Get in your group, make sure you have the right kind of policy. Okay?
Okay.
Good. And then we'll report out in just a second. So,
Getting into groups.
Okay.
I can't remember the order. I think it's distributive in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna say. Wait. What did she say? Okay, you want distributive too?
Redistributive in the back.
yes.
It's in our notes.
Where's
Regulatory, distributive, and redistributive.
Look at regulatory. Yeah.
Are you distributive?
Right here. I don't know where the group is.
What do you have?
Distributive.
Well, like on your paper.
Provide more public concerts.
Mine's 3D printers for public schools.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Lord.
Mine is the little.
It's actually kind of bright.
Alright, ready?
When the lights off, you can like really push it. But it's by a little generator company.
Alright, the backyard redistributive. So I would like you to tell the policy and then just one or two sentences why you think it is redistributive. Okay? Alright, just go.
I got the Robin Hood policy, or I mean, mine's redistributive. I got Robin Hood, it's where they take, it was in the notes. Where they take the money from the richer schools and give it to the not as benefit like the smaller schools. Benefit from the.
Thank you. So do it like that. Thank you. Okay, Matthew.
I got the same type of policy, the temporary assistance to the needy family, of course, and people being taxed for specific groups of people. Lower income.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, Henry, you next?
Yes, ma'am. I had open more public clinics to access contraception services, and not everybody needs contraception services, so.
Makes sense. Thank you. Okay, is it Elaine?
Yes.
Okay.
I have increased teacher pay and it's redistributed because it's going to a specific group and not
Yes.
just the whole community.
Very good, thank you. Mallory.
I had expand chips and it's state child health insurance program, and I well, actually, I looked up saying what it was. It basically provides low-cost medical coverage, but only for people who are not poor enough to need Medicaid, but also not rich enough to be able to pay for their own medical. So that's kind of not benefiting the poor or the rich, that middle class. So that's why I try to redistribute it.
Yep, all right, good, thank you. And I'm so sorry, I'm still learning names, can you give me your last name?
Emily Howell.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you.
I had, increased fundings for the Statesville Economic Development Authority. I chose redistributing, because you're gonna have to take that money from elsewhere to put it into the
Okay,
development authority.
all right, so like I said, it could cross the line between distributed and redistributed, right? So you had increased funding for the Stephenville Economic Development Authority, which is already getting 1.25 cents every time we spend $1 here. So if we increase that, what does it go towards? You wanted another Atwood, didn't you? The Atwood store, that was something that the CEDA, Stephenville Economic Development Authority, did for us. They brought in Atwood. Yeah, and McAllister's and Chick-fil-A, you know, they attract businesses to the area. So would you say, I mean, you can make an argument is redistributed. Could you also make an argument it's distributed?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Great. All right, any more redistributed? Oh, thanks.
I got increased mental health beds in prisons, so it's redistributive. It's a very, very specific audience.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, we're going over to distributive now?
No, I have redistributed as well.
Okay, Macy.
I have just chips, the same thing that she had, except she's expanded, and mine's just the normal one. But it's basically they're taking money from the public to increase or to help our economy and to help manufacturing and everything like that. So I believe it's redistributed.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And you
I provide more public concerts, which is distributive, because everyone can go to them if they want to.
So our tax dollars pay to bring those people to come play in the park. Thank you. All right, Alexis, yes.
I had buy more 3D printers for public schools, which public schools, all schools, so.
Good point.
It benefits the.
It didn't say which schools, right? It didn't say in poor neighborhoods. Really good point. Could that also be redistributed?
Yes,
Okay, good. How could it also be redistributed?
it's only benefiting schools.
It's only benefiting schools, right? Can anybody go into a school library and use that? I don't think so.
Probably not.
Probably not.
That would be fun.
Okay. Thank you very much. Lydia?
I had parks,
Huh?
and then everybody can use a park, so it's distributive.
Good job.
Also, it was in the notes.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Grace?
I had build a wall at the border, and I said distributive because that would be the purpose of it, would be to protect everyone, I guess.
All right. Could we make it redistributed? Or is, okay. Could you say it?
only protects the border towns.
Okay,
But I mean, that's not true. I'm
Yeah.
just saying you could make it.
We could, right, some argument about that, but yeah, I think, yeah, it's good. Thank you, Chris. Who's next? Mallory?
I had used tax expenditure to revitalize downtown Stephenville, and that's just contributing to the community. So.
Right. Have you noticed the little planters out there? Very pretty, you know? So when you drive past downtown, they try to beautify it. Thank you.
Try.
Okay, is it Julie?
Yes.
Okay.
I honestly think I'm in the wrong group.
Oh, what do you have?
I have less Public Utility Commission oversight of energy industry. Honestly, I have no idea what that means.
Okay.
Real.
I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, sorry, well, of course you would get that one.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I'm supposed to be in redistributive because it sounds like you're taking money from the Public Utility Commission and then putting it into the energy industry, but
Okay, so, you know, I just did these off the cuff. So it's decreased money for the PUC?
yes.
Okay. Public Utility Commission was overseeing our energy for Snowpocalypse.
Okay.
So maybe they weren't doing their job so well, so
Okay.
we're gonna decrease funding for them.
Okay.
So this is a tough one. I mean, this is really tough now that I'm thinking about it. What do y'all think?
Is it regulatory?
Regulatory?
What does oversight of the energy industry mean? Does that mean that they're looking over them and decreasing their money because of that?
like because they're not working right or something?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes. So,
Okay.
right, exactly. So if there's less money coming into the PUC, then they can do less,
Okay.
right? So that would affect regular commissions.
Were you supposed to? Thank you. All right, so Cole, are you next?
I had an easier one. It's limit pesticide use, and basically they're regulating how much pesticides you can use on whatever food and stuff.
Good job.
I had limit wastewater discharge, and they're limiting the discharge of wastewater. Regulatory.
Thank you. Good.
I was also a little confused on mine. I have amend Constitution, add college tuition cap,
Yes.
and my thought process behind it being regulatory is saying like, here's the standard and here's the regulations on your tuition.
Yes, and stop you from charging excessive tuition. Good. Thank you. Okay, good. All right, I'm sorry, your last name?
Mayhem.
And there you are. Yeah, thanks.
I have vehicle registration, and I kind of feel like you gotta do it every few years, so it's kind of like a regulatory thing.
Thank you. Victoria?
Yeah, limit college athlete's name, image, and this one there, which means they're regulating their profit for athletes.
Very good. All right.
I have also no idea how I'm supposed to do it. But mine says state lowers property tax rate ceilings for school districts.
Like, which one is specific?
Okay, we have redistributive, distributive, and regulatory. Okay, so read that one more time.
State lowers property tax rate ceilings for school districts.
Okay, so they can't pay, they can't assess as much, right? Their tax rate is going down. Yes, which is what it did in the 2020 recession. Is that regulating?
Cause I feel like it's regulating taxes,
Mhm.
but it's also distributing because it's benefiting people in the community. So I don't know.
That's a good point. Yeah, see, they can cross lines sometimes, so I think you could argue either way on that one. Yeah, so there's not hard and fast rules separating these different types of policies. Good job. Okay, you guys, thank you for participating. Please put your little slip of paper back in the red cup for me. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Sarah Bowden.
But,
Okay.
but I'm not sure. I know, I was like,
And Jaden Lofton?
like right when I got here, I was like, why? Yeah. I was like, this is awkward. That's funny.
And I forgot to take.
I know.